100 years ago, approximately, when the British Raj was still ruling over India, they were greatly oppressing the Muslims there. As to be expected, because the Muslims are the only ones who are really showing any resistance to the colonizers. So some of the Muslims got together, and in particular they had some scholars leading, some ulama. So from the ulama there was Shaykh al-Hind, Mahmud al-Hasan rahimahullah, who gathered a number of his students and a number of other scholars, and they said, we have to rebel against these oppressors, these colonizers. We have to overthrow them so that people can live in peace and they can live freely, especially the believers. So he said that, we can't do it here, we don't have any support, let's go to the Muslim lands to garner support for our movement. So they get together and they travel all the way, this is the year 1916 or so, 1915, they travel to Makkah al-Mukarramah. It's to be expected, right? You're going to go to basically the holiest place on earth, and hopefully you will find Muslims that are sympathetic to your cause. They get there and they begin discussing with the Muslims who are coming for Umrah and for Hajj. Very quickly word reaches the governor or the ruler of Makkah at the time, the Sharif of Makkah. Now, what do you expect he did? This man, the very first thing he does is he gets in contact with the British Raj. He says, here are a bunch of Muslims from your part of the world plotting and planning against you. Hurry up and grab them while you can. So he turns in a group of scholars, Muslims, to the British Raj. This is the Sharif of Makkah, the ruler of Makkah, turns them into the British Raj. They're taken by the British and they're jailed, they're imprisoned in the island of Malta. And that is where Shaykh al-Hind rahimahullah spends 4 years of his life. And these are the very final 4 years of his life. He's released in the year 1920. And then he goes back to Hind, goes back to India, and he spends the next few months, these are the last few months of his life, he spends them touring and lecturing the people there, explaining his story, and he knows that he's on his way out. And he talks about his experiences, and he says that, one day he's addressing people, and everyone's quiet, and he begins to talk. And he says, rahimahullah, that in my time in isolation, I contemplated on the situation of Muslims. Why is the ummah in the state that it is? Why has it fallen from its great heights to these deplorable lows? What happened? And he said, I came to a conclusion that there are two main reasons, two causes for the decline of the Muslim ummah today. And he says, number one, it is division amongst the ummah. Number two, it is their abandonment of the Qur'an, leaving the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaykh Mufti Shafi al-Uthmani rahimahullah, who was in that generation slightly older, just like a little bit after him, rahimahullah, he comments on this statement by Shaykh al-Hind. And he says that I thought about what Shaykh al-Hind said, and I studied, and I've come to the conclusion that what he said was absolutely correct. That the weakness of the ummah is because of their division. And the division of the ummah is because of their abandoning the Qur'an. So what happens? The effect is down here, right? This is the effect, that the Muslim ummah is weak. What caused it? The Muslim ummah is divided, that's the cause. But what made them divided? That the ummah itself has abandoned the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you and I can see that in a very stark contrast, very scarily. It's only been, a week and a half, 2 weeks, not even, until Ramadan ended. Look at your life, look at my life. At a personal level, what was our relationship with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The very final day of Ramadan, what is it 1 day after Ramadan's over? What happens to us? Our Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us about this book. And he's the one who has said that this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's book, that is Hablullahil Mateen, Allah's unbreakable rope that connects the heavens and the earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. All of you hold firm to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the rope of Allah, firmly. The rope of Allah is the book of Allah. وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. And don't become divided. You see the connection between the two of these things. That the Qur'an is the one piece of eternity that unites all of the Muslims from across the world. Whether you are here, reading Taraweeh here in MCC, you're going to hear one Qur'an here. You go to Japan, you're going to hear the exact same Qur'an. You go down to Mozambique, it's the exact same Qur'an that you will hear read again and again and again. But it's not enough that we hear the same words, we read the same words, and yet there's no acting on it. The Messenger ﷺ, the one who said that this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rope that He has connected the heavens and the earth with, that same Messenger on the Day of Judgment, what will he say? He was, قال الرسول يا رب إن قوم اتخذوا هذا القرآن مهجورا. My Lord, my people have taken this book as something to be abandoned. Mahjura, something to be abandoned. What is something that's abandoned? It's something that you reside in previously, and then you leave it derelict. And you leave, you abandon it. A house, an abandoned house is somewhere that people used to live. No longer do they live there. The Quran is something that we had a relationship with it just a couple of weeks ago, right? It wasn't sitting on our shelves. It was actually a part of our lives. What's happened to it right after? And we talk about holding on to the Quran, it's not about, hey, let's get the nicest mushaf possible. Let's listen to the best qari possible. Rather, it is about acting on the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Acting on the Quran. That's what it means to hold on to it. Wallahi, if only the ummah were to act on this book, act on the teachings of the Quran, then we would be united. People look for how do we unite the ummah? This is it. This is the answer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself tells us, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. All of you hold on to this book. If you all live by the Quran, you will be united. And then they will fear us, we will not fear them. I'll give you a story. In the time of our Prophet ﷺ, it's like the 4th year after Hijrah. Muslims have migrated from Mecca to Medina. They've established a Muslim city there. And finally, the Muslims are making a name for themselves. They fought a couple of battles, Badr, Uhud. Muslims have been victorious in a couple of them, have lost a couple of them. And it's at this time when a group of disbelievers, they come all the way from some outside towns and some villages, they come into Medina. And they come to talk to our Prophet ﷺ. And they tell him that, we are interested in accepting Islam, and so are our tribes that we came from. They're interested, or they have accepted, and they want to learn more. Can you send some teachers of the Quran? People who can teach us the Quran, how to read it, how to act on it, how to live by it. Send some people. And Nabi ﷺ agrees, and he says, okay. And one narration says 6 people, one narration says 10 people. They agree on some people, and they send them out. And they travel through the desert, and as they're traveling through the desert, and they're going to the place that they had, promised to rendezvous at, they come across like a little place. It's a place called Rajir. There's a little well over there, and the Muslims, they settle down there. And the disbelievers are also with them. And they go to sleep that night, and they wake up to the swords of the disbelievers at their throats. This is like a huge khiyana, a huge treachery, They came here under false pretenses and lured them out of Medina. And now they've come to attack them and kill the Muslims. The Muslims are obviously in self-defense. They stand up, and a fight breaks out. Eventually what happens is, let's say out of 6, 4 of them are killed. 4 of the Sahaba become Shahada. 2 left. And both of them are captured, and they are now going to be sold off. Because these people don't care. They don't care about the Muslims. They don't really, they don't really care about the entire Islamic enterprise. So they're going to sell off these 2 Sahaba. One of them, his name is Khubayb ibn Adi, radiyallahu anhu. Khubayb ibn Adi. We're going to sell him to Mecca, to a tribe that lives out there. And this is a tribe that has a vengeance and a vendetta against Khubayb. Why? This is a person that in the battle of Uhud, Khubayb killed one of our family members. We're going to get our justice. How are we going to get our justice? By basically buying him, right, a prisoner of war, torturing him, and then killing him. That sounds very just, right? So they take him in. However, the family cannot kill him or execute him immediately, because it is the month of Muharram, and the month of Muharram is a sacred month, so you have to wait until the end of the month to kill him. I imagine that, right? The disbelievers, even they have some form of morals. And so they said, we have to hold him for a little bit of time, a few weeks. So they keep him in their house. And they build like a little makeshift prison for him, and they take some chains and they wrap him in chains, his arms and his legs and his feet. So he's wrapped up and he's put in this little prison cell. Just like we mentioned the story, right, at the beginning, Shaykh al-Hind Mahmud al-Hasan rahimahullah. So he's imprisoned, and this narration is mentioned by Zainab bint al-Harith. She says, so we have this prisoner here. The very first thing we ask him is we have to keep him alive for a few weeks before we execute him. So what do? We go up to him, we ask him, okay, what do you want to eat? What do you want to eat? Now that's the kind of a strange question to ask. I mean, he's Arab just like you guys, right? He was Meccan just like you. So why are you asking him? I said, no, he's different. Because at this point already they know that Muslims are like some kind of weird breed, and some kind of alien species, I mean, they speak the same language, the same, dress code. They look the exact same as them, and just up until a couple of years ago, they were their neighbors. But all of a sudden now, we don't know what you people eat over there in Medina. We don't know what you're really like. So tell us. So he says, you know what? Give me whatever you want to eat with one condition. That the meat that you deliver to me has to be halal. It cannot be sacrificed in the name of Lat and Uzza and Manat. It has to be sacrificed in the name of my Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's it. Imagine, this is what it means to hold firmly to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a man on death row about to be executed. And what's his primary concern? Make sure the meat you provide for me is halal. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Ya ayyuha rusulu kulu min at-tayyibati wa'amalu salihah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands his prophets to eat pure and do good deeds. To eat pure. He is commanding the prophets of Allah that they have to eat pure. So who are you and I? Right? Hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which he specifically tells us that a person will be ash'atha aghbar, madfu'un bil abwab. Person is covered in dust, completely disheveled, rejected from any person that he goes to ask for help. and that person is in a miserable state. You think if Allah is going to accept anyone's du'as, it's going to be this guy's du'as. He raises his hands and begs from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah give me this, Allah give me that, Allah give me this, and Allah does not answer a single du'a of his. Why not? Because the person, his food, his drink, his clothing, all of it came from haram sources. غُذِيَ بِالْحَرَامِ, the person was nourished by haram. فَأَنَّا يُسْتَجَابَ لَهُ, in what world will Allah accept his du'as? And we wonder, brothers and sisters, the entire month of Ramadan went, right, 30 days, and we prayed, and we fasted, and we made du'a after du'a after du'a. You made hundreds and thousands of du'as. How many of them were accepted? And you wonder why that's the case. It's not, don't always think, oh, Allah has a better plan for me. Maybe Allah's plan for you is to eat halal, so that maybe Allah can accept your du'a. In Mecca, 27th night of Ramadan, 3-4 million people, miles and miles and miles beyond the Kaaba, people are lined up praying, begging from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People are holding the kiswa of the Kaaba and their du'as are not accepted. You wonder why. This is not something that, oh, Bilal's coming here telling us something. No, this is what your messenger is saying, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. If you don't eat halal, if your income is not halal, don't expect Allah to accept your du'as. Just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And this is a man on death row. His primary concern is this. How many of us do we even bother? We go to the, you go to the store, oh, this is something we've always eaten. Oh, I always get this for my kids. Oh, my mom always gets this for us. And we never think to look, maybe, let me just see if it doesn't, and you've been eating gelatin for like 10 years, right? You don't even realize. All of us, it takes a couple of seconds. A man on death row, he does not forget. He does not forget that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded me to eat that which is pure. So what does she say? She's like, you know what? We're not going to give him any meat. Forget that. We'll give you vegetarian only. So they feed him a vegetarian meal from then on. Okay, so you get to the second part. So one day, she comes into the home, and this is a man, he has chains on his wrists and on his ankles. Can't move. He's stuck in a prison cell. And she comes in and she sees him, and he is eating grapes like the size of a human head. Okay, where are you going to get a grape like that, right? And she's just stunned by this, like, what? She looks at him and she says, where'd you get this from? Look at his answer. Inna Rabbi yut'imuni wa yasqin. My Lord gives me to eat, and my Lord gives me to drink. That's his response. What does your Lord say, subhanahu wa ta'ala? وَلَوْ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْقُرَىٰ آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا لَفَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَرَكَاتٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. If only the people were to believe and have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, live a God-conscious life, Allah will open miracles. Every blessing that you can imagine, Allah will give you from the heavens and the earth. You cannot get a grape the size of a human head in this life. It comes from Jannah. What is his response? And she herself in the narration, she says, Wallahi innahu lamawthuqun bil hadid. He's encompassed completely in chains. Where did he get that from? Wallahi ma bi Makkah min tamrin. She says, in all of Makkah there wasn't a single date to be found, and this man is in a prison cell eating a grape this big. How's that? We cannot make a small, it's not even a sacrifice, right? A little sacrifice. And yet we want the major miracles of the Sahaba were given. We have to hold ourselves accountable. أَيْنَ نَحْنُ مِنْ هَؤُلَاءِ. Where are we in comparison to the companions of our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And she says that the day of his execution is drawing near. Okay, so a few days have passed now. It's just on the eve of his execution. So he asks for a favor. He says, can I have a razor blade? Can I have a razor blade? Why do you want a razor blade? So that I can remove basically any excess hair. I can, kind of line myself up and look nice when I meet my Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is his concern and his priority? He's about to be executed tomorrow. I have to look presentable when I stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You and I, we stand in front of Allah minimum 5 times a day. What are we wearing when we do that? We come to the masjid of Allah, the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's Allah's house. You go to your neighbor's house and you don't dress, inappropriately. I mean, if you go to an interview, how do you dress? If you go to Walmart, how do you dress? Forget the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People come for Eid dressed in pajamas. Right? I mean, this is a Sahabi, he's saying, I'm going to die tomorrow. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a command. خُذُوا زِينَتَكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ مَسْجِدٍ. Take your adornment whenever you go to the house of Allah. Dress in your best. And how is it the case that if you go to meet your friends, you dress way nicer than when you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your Lord? And then that same Allah, we want Him to adorn us in gold and silver and silk and a crown on our heads on the Day of Judgment. When we come to His house, we dress in pajamas. We dress in shorts. Right? We have to ask ourselves this question. Look at His priority. Am I following the command of Allah? Am I dressed properly before I go meet my Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala? So she gives him the razor blade. I'm going to go a couple minutes over. I hope you guys don't mind, okay? And so she gives him the razor blade. And so she is, he's sitting in his prison cell. And she gets busy with the kitchen and cooking or something. She turns around after a few minutes. She's looking for her son. Can't find him. She turns around in a panic and sees her son inside of the prison cell. And he's sitting on the lap of Khubayb ibn Adi radiallahu anhu. فَفَزِعْتُ فَزْعَةً شَدِيدَةً. She was like, I was struck by a great fear. Because, this is a man, he's got a blade in his hand and my child is on his lap. What's he going to do? Either ransom himself, like ransom my child for his freedom, or he's going to kill my kid out of revenge. That's what he's going to do. And he looks up at her. أَتَخْشَيْنَ أَن نَقْتُلَهُ. Are you afraid I'm going to kill your son? This is not how Muslims operate. This is not something I would do. This is not something any believer would do. What does your Lord say subhanahu wa ta'ala? وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنْآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَنْ لَا تَعْدِلُوا اِعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. Do not let your hatred for a group of people drive you to injustice. Be just. That is the closest to taqwa. What happens? People say, someone says a bad word to us, you respond 10 times worse back to them. Right? A person mistreats you, okay, I'm going to show you and your dad how I am. Right? That's what we feel like. Oh, these people, they treat Muslims like this, see how we treat them. But wallahi, we should never fall to their level. Why? They are not our teachers. We are not them, nor are we like them. Let them dig their own hole and fall into it. You don't need to worry about that. Be a better person. Right? Live the life of a Muslim. That's what this is. He is on his death. He's about to be executed. He knows that he's going to be killed. And he can now finally have a little bit of revenge, or at least ransom himself. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that to an innocent child. And look at what she says. This is Zainab bint al-Harith, disbeliever at the time. She accepts Islam later on. What does she say? Wallahi ma ra'aytu asiran mithla Khubayb qat. Wallahi, I've never seen a prisoner like Khubayb in my life. Who was this guy? He's taken out of his prison cell. It's the next day. It's the day of his execution. They take him outside of Mecca. Because Mecca is the haram, the sacred sanctuary. You got to take him out to the hill. The hill is basically anything outside of Mecca. And that is where you and I go. You know where they take him? A city called Tan'im. I'm sure you guys have heard of the city of Tan'im. That is where we go to do what? To put on your ihram. If you've completed Umrah and you're inside of Mecca, when you want to do a second Umrah, then you have to go out to Masjid Aisha. That's in the city of Tan'im. Today, you and I, we go outside of Mecca to go there to put on your ihram so you can do another Umrah. On the other hand, they're taking Khubayb outside of Mecca to Tan'im so they could kill him there. So now remember that next time you go for Umrah, inshaAllah, that you remember this story of Khubayb. They take him, they said, we're going to make an example out of this guy. We're going to make an example out of him. We're not just going to kill him like we would anyone else. We are going to set a precedent in this peninsula. We'll kill him in a way that is unique to the peninsula. We're going to crucify him. So they set up a stake. And they take Khubayb radiallahu anhu and they tie him to the stake. And now it's a group of 40 or 50 individuals. And if I name names, you're going to be shocked and stunned. Because from these people, the vast majority accepted Islam, including Abu Sufyan. And they begin to torture him and abuse him in the worst of ways. And they're cutting him and they're torturing him. They're cutting off parts of his body. Right? He's just bleeding all over. Totally. And then they ask him, they said that, go ahead. Give you any last wishes that you have. He said, I have one last wish. What is that? I'm sure you guys know the story. What does he say? Give me an opportunity to pray 2 rak'ahs. That's it. This is a man who can't even be in his senses right now, the amount of pain that he is feeling. And his worry and concern is, did I pray 2 rak'ahs before, this big step I'm about to take? Look at their adherence to salah. As-salatu mi'rajul mu'min. This is your ascension to your Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. You want to be divinely ascended? Pray your salah. And yet, salah is the first thing that we look to cut out. Right? How many of us can say that, how many of us in your car, you have a janamaz, a musalla in your car? Right? People come to the masjid, they come to me, hey, can I have something to cover my awrah with? I think to myself, ya subhanallah. We can't even think, it takes 2 seconds of thinking, of forethought, that the prayer time is going to come in when I'm here, when I'm there. Am I going to be ready to pray? We should ask ourselves, first thing we do, it's okay, I'll combine my prayer. Hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a person who combines prayer without any valid reason has entered the door of major sin. And yet what do? It's work and it's okay, I can pray Asr, I can pray Dhuhr at Asr time. Allah will understand. That's the very first thing we're willing to do, is to delay our prayer or to leave it, abandon altogether. That is the one thing that differentiates a believer and a disbeliever, is abandonment of the prayer. Khubayb radiallahu anhu, he prays his 2 rak'ahs, but he prays very fast. As soon as he's done praying, they're shocked, they're like, why did he pray so fast? And he says, look, let me tell you something. Okay, okay, so those who know, they know. And he says, let me tell you, I didn't pray quickly because I was afraid. I didn't pray quickly, I didn't delay my prayer, I didn't prolong my prayer. Why? Because I didn't want you to think that I was afraid of death and that I was delaying my execution. So I prayed quickly, or else I would pray a very long, slow, concentrated prayer. That's what I would do. But I prayed really quickly so that you didn't think this guy's a coward. No, I'm ready to meet my Lord. They put him back on the cross and they start abusing him and torturing him again. And as they're torturing him again, now they got to inflict some kind of psychological, mental torture. So they take him back down. So okay, we got one more question for you. Look at the situation you're in, the pitiful, miserable state you're in right now. You would give anything to escape the situation. How about this? If we were to offer you this, would you not like that Muhammad was in your place right now? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Look at his response. He doesn't just say no. Look at his response. He said, Wallahi, if I was offered the opportunity to sit in my home with my family and my kids, and Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was only pricked by a thorn, I would not accept that deal. That much. I would not want my comfort, the highest level of comfort I could, for the smallest discomfort, inconvenience that our Prophet could face. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Even that's not acceptable for me. And at this point, the mushrikeen, what do they say? مَا رَأَيْنَا أَحَدًا يُحِبُّ أَحَدًا مِثْلَ حُبِّ أَصْحَابِ مُحَمَّدٍ مُحَمَّدًا. We have never seen anyone love a person like another person, like these people love Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Like, who are these people? Right? They couldn't believe themselves. They put him back on the cross to kill him. And a few things happened at this point. Khubayb radiallahu anhu realizes it's the last moments of his life. The very first thing he does is what? He sends salawat upon the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He looks around and he says that there's no believers here. And it's a very long qasida, very long poem, in which he specifically says that Allah send my peace and blessings upon your Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because there's no one here to do it for me. As the narration mentions, the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is in Medina. At this time he's conversing with the Sahaba. He stops for a moment and he says, Wa alayka salam ya Khubayb. Because Allah SWT conveyed the salam of Khubayb radiallahu anhu. Allah offers that to you and I, every single one of us. Hadith of the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Anyone who says Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the angels carry that to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So how many of us are doing that on a regular basis? And so it's the first thing. The second thing is Khubayb radiallahu anhu makes dua against all of the people around him. Right? Again, وَاتَّقُوا دَعْوَةَ الْمَظْلُومِ. Be very cautious of the da'wah, of the dua of an oppressed person. الظُّلْمُ ظُلُمَاتٌ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Oppression is layers and levels of darkness on the day of judgment. Be very, very careful, because there is no hijab between the dua of a madhloom, of an oppressed person, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be very careful that you have not transgressed on the rights of another person. He makes dua against all of the people who are there. And the third and final thing is, he says a long qasida, a long poem, and I'm just going to mention a couple of last lines, and wallahi, it should hearken our attention to the struggle and the plight of our brothers and sisters all around the world, especially in Gaza and Palestine, but many other places, in which he specifically says, وَلَسْتُ أُبَالِي حِينَ أُقْتَلُ مُسْلِمًا عَلَى أَيِّ جَنْبٍ كَانَ فِي اللَّهِ مَصْرَعِي وَذَاكَ فِي ذَاتِ الْإِلَهِ وَلَوْ يَشَأْ أَنْ يُبَارِكَ عَلَى أَوْصَالِ شِلْوٍ مُمَزَّعِ. He says, radiyallahu anhu, I don't care where I am killed, I don't care which side of my body I fall upon, because I have full hope that I did this for the sake of Allah. I gave my life for the sake of my Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah will bless every torn limb of my body. And wallahi, we see what's happening to our brothers and sisters, especially in Palestine, and you see the videos that are coming out, and they're heartbreaking. I just saw a picture last night. I saw a picture of a little baby, less than a year old, little baby less than 6 months old. And that baby was missing her left arm. And today, just right now before I started the khutbah, I just read the report that little child has passed away because of her injuries. Just a week, 2 weeks ago, I saw a video of a brother. He's holding a bag, like a grocery bag, and inside of that are the remains of his child. I saw another video. A man is there holding a decapitated head of his child, and that child's name is Ahmed. That child, he's saying Ahmed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the name Ahmed in the Quran. وَمُبَشِّرًا بِرَسُولِ يَأْتِي مِن بَعْدِ اسْمُهُ أَحْمَدٍ. The name of your Prophet ﷺ is Ahmed. These are people who are giving their lives for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in defense of Muslim lands. They are doing something which all of the masjid of ours, right, we would not be able to muster. The courage that they have. But do not think that any of it is in vain or any of it is in loss. Absolutely not. This is what it means to hold on to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is not asking us to do all of that, at least an iota of it. I mentioned a number of things in today's khutbah, a number of commands, ahkam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Sahabi radiallahu anhu is there, being crucified. At this moment, they take an arrow and they stab it through his chest, and he passes away, radiallahu anhu. He becomes a shaheed. But even until the last moments of his life, he did not give up even a single command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's book. Right now, while we have the ability, the time, to do all of this, to follow the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let's make the most of it. Do not let it be in vain. Do not let it be in waste. We don't want to fall under the statement of our Prophet ﷺ that my people, they took the Quran as something to be abandoned. In Quran it was convenient, it was fun, so they took part in it. In Ramadan they took part in the Quran, but then as soon as Ramadan was over, they left it on their shelves for it to collect dust. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strengthen our connection with the Quran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to follow in the footsteps of our Sahaba radiallahu anhum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease the struggle of our brothers and sisters in Palestine and elsewhere around the world as well. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر